Welcome to Out of Court and Out of Conflict, presented by Wasinger Law Office.
Hello and welcome to Out of Court and Out of Conflict, your guide to estate law and probate solutions by Wasinger Law Office. Join us today as we unravel legal complexities and secure your family's legacy with experienced attorney Matt Wasinger. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is Yours, Mine, and Ours, Estate Planning Strategies for Modern Families. Matt, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me back. Like that we coordinated our shirts.
Oh my God, we totally did. We totally did. Hey, listen, I love when a plan comes together. Got to work on my beard though.
Yeah.
So what is it that makes estate planning so complex when it comes to blended family?
Well, blended families, which, to anyone that doesn't know, blended family is when we've got children from different marriages, essentially, or prior partners, I should
Brady
say.
Bunch.
Very much like the Brady Bunch.
Nice current reference there.
Part of the problem and the complexity with that is you've got parents that are on the same page, but then they might not all get along with each other, which happens in all families, whether they're blended or not. The difference is, though, most of the time, the joint parents of the same children don't tend to always rip one of them out or multiple of them out of the will or the estate in general, unless there's been some massive problem with them. But what does tend to happen more frequently is that the step parent or the new spouse or not the kids that someone passed, when the dad or mom pass of the other kids, they tend to redo everything or cut them out completely because they don't have a direct lineal descent. So if everything goes to the new spouse per the law or per their setup, she's got no requirement to divvy any of that up for the deceased spouse's children. So what you have there immediately is some sort of conflict or someone being completely left out. And it happens more frequently than you would imagine because once somebody gets money, they tend to not want to share it, right?
No.
And then, there are just more inherent struggles or controversies or just disagreements when it comes to someone who's not your parent. So what we really try to focus on is making sure that each step along the way with blended families, children of each parent are getting something, or they're handled in a way that they can't be completely cut out unless that's what both of the parents want.
Right. Yeah. Unless somebody's intentionally cut out.
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people in blended families make when they create an estate plan, or can you also talk about the issues with not creating an estate plan at all?
Well, the issues of not creating a estate plan at all are kind of what we've already discussed is, under the law, your descendants should get your assets. So if, let's say, your father is remarried and she's got kids with somebody else, under Florida law, if there's no estate plan in place, the wife gets an elective share of whatever of the deceased parent, your dad's estate, meaning a life estate in the house until she passes, but then the rest only goes to his descendants, meaning his kids. So she's going to split everything with his kids, right? She doesn't get to necessarily make a determination of where else that goes. So at the same time, she feels that the stepmother feels that they've contributed more to the estate and there should be more in there without an estate plan in place, it's going to skip her kids and she's only going to get a certain allotted amount altogether. So that's automatically leaving somebody out. And then the other mistake is when they're doing the estate plan is when you're building trusts, especially a joint trust for a couple, 9 times out of 10 for estate planning purpose, for estate tax purposes, for just flexibility, unless they've got just a really big estate, they just give everything in a revocable trust to the surviving spouse. And then they've got provisions for the surviving spouse to divvy after they pass to give that to all the kids on both sides. But if it's in a revocable trust for the surviving spouse, she can change that. He. It's not always the stepmom that's the problem. Can change.
It's just
that.
what Disney movies have led us to believe.
That's right. They can cut everybody out. They can divvy it up however they want, and that's what ends up happening. So when you don't have the estate plan set up to make sure that certain people get it, or you don't separate them, a lot of attorneys want, anytime there's a blended family, to just do two separate revocable trusts. So the other person can't change the others, and they've got some co-ownership here and there, but mainly their assets are separated altogether. Is not outlining exactly what is going to go with who, and in a way that prevents the surviving spouse from amending all of that and cutting out the children from the deceased spouse's family.
So we've talked about the differences between wills and trusts on this show before, and not everybody needs a trust. We've talked about that as well. Is when it comes to blended families, do you really feel like they should always work with trusts?
Yeah, I mean that's my general recommendation, because that's the only way that you can really control how money goes after you pass. You can, in a will, stipulate where things are supposed to go, but it still has to go through probate, and that creates some extra expense. And depending on how the surviving spouse handles the will, let's say the children don't have copies of it or anything else, they might not know where it is. They might not have a copy of it at all. They might not even know it exists. And then the surviving spouse can kind of do what they want with all the assets and say, oh, everything's supposed to go this way, or whatever. So you can create in a will, technically you can create a testamentary trust where it's set up after the fact by your personal representative. But most of the time, that personal representative, when one spouse dies, is the surviving spouse. So they actually have to go set that up and divvy it up that way. So it's just an inherent conflict in which, our whole overarching goal, out of court and out of conflict, right? The only way to really separate things cleanly and ahead of time is with a trust. And so it makes the most sense for blended families to absolutely set up a trust versus just a will.
When it comes to life insurance, retirement accounts that might still list an ex-spouse or perhaps outdated beneficiaries, what should clients do to kind of make sure that everything's going to the right place?
They need to keep them updated, because beneficiary designations override trusts, they override wills. So this happens a lot, in divorce cases, is someone forgets to remove the ex-spouse, and it doesn't matter what their new will or trust says. That insurance company, for life insurance purposes, or the financial company that's handling the retirement, they're going to send it directly to whoever that beneficiary designation is, free and outright. Once they have it, they can do whatever they want with it. Updating your beneficiary designations immediately and your financial and medical power of attorney is important when you're dealing with exes, or you just want somebody else in charge or getting those assets, because it's they supersede everything.
So if you're talking to a client and he or she wants to ensure minor children from a prior relationship are financially supported without creating conflict with a current spouse, what are the options that you think are best? What's the best process for getting that to ensuring everything is in place without, creating any conflict?
Depending on their assets, and my firm, we really just try to outline the options for everybody and let them decide what makes the most sense for their family. I mean, we obviously make recommendations, but depending on their assets and if they've got a lot of separated assets already, sometimes just doing separate trusts for both of them to handle on their own, so the other spouse isn't too able to change anything, is the best move. But if they don't want to do that and they prefer just a joint trust, and maybe they have a bunch of joint assets, but they want to designate certain amount of things, then we'll do a joint trust. But what I always recommend is when the first spouse passes, whatever children or beneficiaries they want money to go, their assets to go to, they do some outright right when that first spouse passes, not waiting until the second spouse passes, even if it could be a small amount, but just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a reason not to create conflict and start fighting over what may or may not come down the line. And so that's one way to make sure that everyone's getting a little something right away. And then the other way is setting up what we call Q-tip trusts. Whoever passes, their assets go directly into an irrevocable trust. And then that way, the surviving spouse is one of the beneficiaries of that irrevocable trust, but she can't just give it away or change what's happening with it. So it goes down to the children or the other beneficiaries that the deceased spouse wanted without having to worry about the surviving spouse giving it away or cutting them out. So those are the main ways to kind of build around that. And, there's a million variables in there and different ways to do it. But
Sure.
that's generally speaking the easiest way and the smartest way to ensure that you're not creating conflict and everyone is getting what they want them to have.
When someone, obviously we're talking about blended families here and how it can be more complex. What are some red flags you see when someone sits down with you where you're like, whoa, I don't know if that's such a good idea. Or, I know you, like you said, you only give advice. You can't tell them what to do. You can make recommendations. What are some things that kind of get your spidey senses up a bit?
If there's already a lot of disagreements between the two people that are sitting there in the office and it's their assets, then you start thinking, okay, maybe we should just split these up because there's a chance you guys might not go down the same path any further than the next 3 years. And that's what we try to do, is let's plan on the next 3 years if people are struggling to make decisions, because we bring back our clients every 3 years to just kind of touch base and say, hey, has your life changed? Has the law changed, or have your assets changed? Do we need to make any adjustments? So that's the number one red flag. The second one is if they've got kids that already have some sort of issue in their life, whether maybe they're going through a divorce, or maybe they've got gambling or addiction issues of some kind. That's when you really want to start talking about the interpersonal relationships between the kids and who you're choosing to handle all of these things after you pass. Makes a huge difference on whether or not those issues are going to rear their head, in the trust administration or probate process or not. And so we want to avoid those. So conflicts, and it can be very subtle. And say, well, Kevin just really struggles to keep any money in his pocket, and he doesn't really get along with Tracy. Well,
it's true. I can't deny
it. Then we're going to need to adjust and say, all right, maybe Kevin shouldn't be in charge of this. And maybe we make sure that Kevin and Tracy getting a little bit here and there, so they're not fighting with each other over what's coming down the road.
So really, all of this is obviously trying to, avoid conflicts in the future, sort of predict how things could go. But in a blended family situation, it sounds like there's just so many more nuances about it that there's just a lot more that you have to kind of piece together.
Yeah, and this is true of non-blended families as well. Everyone's got some issues or some controversies within the family that you got to address and pay attention to. So it's not just blended families, but blended families, just by the nature of how they come together, tend to lend themselves to more issues down the road if it's not addressed early in the estate planning process. And that's why if you've got a blended family, you want to set up an estate plan, if for nothing else, to make sure that your kids aren't fighting with your spouse's kids once someone passes, or with your spouse. And especially if they don't already get along, you want to set that up right away, because you don't want that to continue to drag out or end up in court because someone's not happy about the way the surviving spouse's trustee is handling things, or in probate court where everyone starts fighting over what everyone's doing.
Yeah, probate court. I could see that being almost like a movie or a show waiting to happen for a blended family in probate court.
Yeah, that's the typical way probate goes. It doesn't have to be a lot of money either. Everyone thinks, oh, if I don't have that much money, it won't be that big a deal. People fight over the smallest amount of money and spend more money on attorney's fees to try to get it, and they claim it's a principal thing, and they'll just keep going. Principal always works until the attorney bill comes. Then all of a sudden the principal changes.
Then all of a sudden, is it really a victory?
Yeah.
So for if there's a blended family out there listening that knows they need to begin the estate planning process with their new family, how can they get started, and what should they kind of, if they're going to come to you, what should they have prepared? What should they be ready for?
Well, they want to try to think about, and this is where our homework asks them these questions that we have them do before they come in. But, what's the goal here? How do you want this money passed down? What are you trying to avoid? Are you trying to avoid creditors, predators for their family? You know, are you protecting some of the children from themselves? You want to think about those things. And then most importantly, you want to think about who you want to be in charge of everything. And sometimes that makes the most sense to be each other, the spouse, but sometimes, or a family member, but sometimes it's not. Maybe there's a friend or a financial advisor, somebody in the inner circle that you really know is going to do what they're supposed to do instead of creating conflict down the line. And so those are the things to start thinking about before you even get in there, and what we want will work through with you once you're in the office.
Can you give us a craziest thing you've seen people fight over story?
Oh, it was DVDs.
DVDs.
Well, I mean, and that's maybe not the craziest, but you know, we're in the era of streaming.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. So, and it was a fight over DVDs, and the value of which could not be high. I don't know if you've checked out trying to buy a DVD on eBay recently, but they are not. It's not. You're not getting a lot of money for it. So it's those things. There's always something someone can fight over if they really want to, and they'll do it.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, I've got like a drawer or like a cabinet full of DVDs. I just don't know what to do with them. I feel kind of bad throwing them away, you know?
Yeah, you know, you could probably try to donate them, but then again, you might need to donate a DVD player for someone to figure out how to watch them.
It's true. That's very true. Wow, DVDs. All right, that's one for the big board. All right, well, thanks for tuning in to Out of Court and Out of Conflict with experienced attorney Matt Wasinger. For more information or to connect with Matt, visit wasingerlawoffice.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Matt, always great having you here. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos like this one.